G'day everybody, welcome back to the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave your tips down the bottom, and let's have a recap of last week. Alright, let's start off with the game between Manly and the Rabbitohs. It's good to see Manly bounce back from their loss last week, and they kind of like overran the Rabbitohs, who are kind of like sliding down the ladder still. Manly come away with that one, 28-14. Next up was the Storm down there at Melbourne against the Knights. The Storm did get out to a bit of a head start, but the Knights really made a big comeback and almost got it. Storm come away with that one with a little sly 32-30, so just got away with it. The next game in was the Roosters versus the Raiders, and once again Ricky has lost his entire mind and doesn't even want to answer any questions anymore. The Roosters went down to Canberra and gave them a bit of a touch-up, 26-0. That's the first time the Raiders have been locked out for, I think it's almost 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see what Ricky makes of all that. Maybe he'll suck his thumb and quit, but we'll see how that goes. The next game in is the Cowboys versus the Dolphins. And like I said last week, I don't think it would have mattered that the Dolphins went up to Townsville, because the temperature between Brisbane and Townsville is not much in it. So the Dolphins turned up there with their pretty well full squad, and they took care of it, and they ran riot pretty well all over the park, and they came away with a 40-14 victory over the Cows. So now we're going to move on to the upset of the round, and it's the Titans. I don't know, Marie likes the Titans, and looks like the Broncos are still imploding. And if the Broncos don't do a U-bolt shortly, they're going to miss the finals. So we'll watch that out. Next up was the Tigers trying to tame the Panthers. Well, that didn't go very well for them at all. And the Panthers were once again far too clinical. The next game in was the Sharks versus the Dragons. And it looks like that win the Dragons had last week was a flash in the pan. And the Sharks made short work. I said it before and I'll say it again, I can see the Dragons and the Eels playing for the wooden spoon right at the end of the season. Alright, once again we see the Bulldogs versus the Eels, and after a scoreless first half, which was hard slogged by both teams, as flipping Eels, man. They will be playing for the spoon against the Dragons at the end of the season. The Dogs stuck away with that one, 14-12, and like I said, it was a scoreless first half, so it was a bit of a cracker. As you can see, it could have been anybody's game in that second half, but the Dogs come away with it. Once again, the Eels really need to do some soul searching. This is 2 years in a row. It looks like they're going to miss the finals. Maybe getting rid of Brad after wasn't a very good idea. Next on, we'll move on to the next games of round 15. Once again, I can't understand why we're having Thursday night football when there's only like 5 teams playing. Okay, the first game on the weekend is the Rabbits versus the Broncos. And at the moment, the Rabbits have still got Latrell out and 4 others. And the good old Broncos aren't faring very well in the injury department themselves. They've got 9 players out injured. Patrick Carrigan's one of them, and Billy Walters another, and Reese has gone off to play Origin. So if there's any time that the Rabbits are going to make any sort of inroads into this, even though they're coming 8th at the moment, they need to put a big score together onto the Brisbane Broncos. So this week my money's going to be on the Rabbits. The Broncos are too depleted in the troop department, and I think the Rabbits might get the Broncos by 8. Game after that is the Dolphins versus the Roosters. This is a very, very tough game to pick. The Dolphins are running high. The Roosters are running also high. This is this will almost put the Dolphins in the top 4 if they win this game. This is a hard one to pick. Dolphins, Roosters. Roosters have got a fair few players out playing for the State of Origin. The Hammers missing out of the Dolphins team. It is here in Brisbane, so with that in mind, I'm just going to take the home ground advantage and go on the Dolphins, not by many, by 4. Next game in is the Warriors versus the Sharks. Yes, the Sharks did win last week, but it was only against St George, which was never nobodies. The Warriors are going pretty good at the moment. They're still second spot. The Sharks are going to be without Nico Hines, so that's going to be a big devastating blow for them. So my money's going to be on the good old Warriors, and I reckon the Warriors will get the Sharks by at least 10 points. So that's my thing out. Alright, the next game in is the Eels versus the Raiders, and the Eels haven't won a game since round 10. They were without Mitch Moses. Ricky's going mental. Raiders are playing bad. Raiders have got a couple of players coming back this week. Oh man, I really think the Eels should win shortly, but I can't see it this weekend, not without Moses. So I hate to say this because I really don't like Ricky much. I'm going to take the Raiders, but not by many. Raiders by 4. Last game in is the West Tigers versus the Gold Coast Titans, and this is another toss-up. Tigers got beat last week by the Panthers, which is a good side. They got shut out. Benji Marshall won't be too happy with that. Then again, the Titans come along and they beat the Broncos. Have the Titans turned the corner, or will the Tigers bounce back? I reckon Luai won't be too happy with what happened last week. And I think Benji might be bashing them pretty well too during training. They did come up against the best team in the comp, where the Broncos were on a slide. I think the Tigers might just get this, and when I say might, I'm going the Tigers by 2. Alright, it's recap time. First game in is the Rabbits by 8, Dolphins by 4, the Wars by 10, easy peasy, the Raiders by a tricky 4 with Tricky Ricky, and the Tigers by a sly little 2 over the Titans. Anyway, that's it for this week. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.